Hey everybody, welcome back to Arm Crossfire with SP and Gabi. Sorry to keep you guys waiting, just running into some technical difficulties. We should have them all sorted out now. It's a big show today, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are joined by Anders Axklo. How are you doing today, sir?
I am very good. It's about 8 o'clock here in Sweden, and I've just spent a day off coming back from South Africa and just spending time at home with my wife and with my son. So it's been a good day.
All right. Well, before we get into what we need to talk about, and of course, we all know what that is, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your history in the sport, and just basically introduce the North American audience and everyone that's watching around the world that may not know you to you.
Well, bilingual upbringing and by Swedish missionaries in South Africa. Botswana, mostly as an adult in Sweden, worked in media sales for 20 years, started in strongman and promoted strongman from 98. I have been Magnus Samuelsson's manager for a year or two. I work closely with him as well. Never in arm wrestling, but in strongman there. I've been the Eurosport's Swedish commentator for all of the Arm Wars events, all of the strongman events for 15 years. I've been the speaker at Sweden's Strongest Man for the last 20 years. And I've been the unanimously voted president of the Swedish Arm Wrestling Federation for the last 10 years.
So, you are now the first president of IFA.
Yes, I am.
How, this is a lot. So how did the IFA come to be formed? What was the jump off point that created what is now that organization?
Well, there were a few of us involving both Anna and Igor Mazarenko and Marian Chaplin, a few others of us who saw sort of the clouds gathering as IRPA, which was basically a ranking system that a management in WAF chose to interpret in a very skew way. And we saw a storm brewing, and we had a contingency plan that says, what if this happens, if it comes to the worst, that they're starting to interfere with people's actual arm wrestling, what to do? And the plan of forming a new federation wasn't really an option we wanted to jump to, because it is a heap of work, and above all, any organization calling themselves anything with arm wrestling is about enabling people to arm wrestle. So that was like the final line. There's been a lot of discussion about all other sort of corruption, all the holes in the systems and so on, and I'll be happy to discuss that to a certain extent. But the final line for me was when an organization which sole purpose is to promote arm wrestling and organize arm wrestling started stopping people from arm wrestling. That was the final line.
Okay, when you say stopping them from arm wrestling, are you specifically talking about how did they do that?
Well, honestly, when they started rattling the cages last winter, I really didn't think they were going to be dumb enough to actually do that. I knew they were flexing a bit of muscle, trying to get people in line, trying to scare people in line. And we had a plan for what to act, those of us talking about it. And we said, let's hang on to the European Congress in Greece, and let's see if they're actually going to act on this, because we really didn't believe that they would. And to be honest, it's not a clever move for themselves, and that's why we weren't sure that they were going to do that. But when they put that in wording, and which is now also the wording they pushed through in the WAF Congress, then it just become irrevocable. And the wording is, it's not about IFA and IRPA, which many people think. It's about every other arm wrestling organization. That is the exact wording in the proposal that they pushed through and voted through, which technically means that this list that they published yesterday, which is sort of very entertaining, because it mainly consists of people with WAF have nothing to do with. The Swedish athletes, the Polish athletes, WAF are not their concern. We're not members of WAF. We don't recognize WAF anymore as a governing body. So whether or not they put as a list is totally,
irrelevant.
Yeah, it's totally irrelevant. It doesn't matter to us at all. And I'll tell you that my Swedish athletes have had a ball with that since yesterday, because they've actually on Instagram been posting their names highlighted off the list and spreading it around as a joke. So,
well, I saw
they might have a GDPR problem with that as well, because they're listing people with name, weight, country on list, publishing it, that haven't given their agreement for their data to be handled by them at all.
That's an interesting point, because any of that data they had to have pulled off of the IFA site, correct?
Well, I mean, they're public result lists, and they're obviously not doing it very well either. It's just the results list from the Worlds, and rearranged, sorted in an Excel document, and then exported out again. I'm not on there, for example, which is hilarious. I really should be on there, for what it would be worth to them. But there were a couple of things that happened while I was still an elected member of the European Arm Wrestling Federation board that sort of pushed me over there, and I said, no, that's it.
Now, can you speak to what those are? Like, what are the things that actually...
Well, the first thing that happened is that, and this was while I was an elected member, which I technically still am, to be honest. So, no, I've left the organization, so I'm not in there anymore. It was the first IRPA competition, was the Riga Open, held by the Latvian Federation.
Yeah.
And it's a neighboring country, it's across the Baltic from us. And I went over to see it, to support it, just to see how they work the IRPA thing because to me, the IRPA was not controversial. It's a ranking system that a professional promoter has decided to do that you can join up with. That's, it's not controversial at all. And I was over there. Igor made a big play of it, to be honest. He did, handing over plaques and so forth, and shaking hands and shaking babies and kissing hands and on camera. And when I got home, I received an email concerning my misconduct in Riga. And I answered it quite politely. And I said, well, thank you for asking. Let me explain what I did in Riga. I supported a neighboring country's federation. I went to an arm wrestling tournament that's been going on for 20 years, and that is now joined up with a ranking system that is in no way contrary to any statutes we have. That's what I did in Riga. Thank you for asking. And I don't see wherein would be the misconduct, and I would also question my peers on the board's right to address me in that tone. I'm elected on the board. I was elected on the board on the same premises as everybody else, and I was, there was nobody in a position to deal with me in that sense. And 2 days later, there was an official letter published, the first of all the official letters. If you do this, you shall be banned. Now,
so ahead of the Riga event, there was nothing announced that you should not go to that, or did they say?
Oh, no, there had been, but again, it had no constitutional support. There were no supports in the statute. So it was whether or not somebody was displeased with it isn't really the point.
Right.
I mean, if everything has to please whoever's in charge, then we're going to have a very small sport. I mean, there are lots of things in arm wrestling now that I don't particularly agree with, but I don't mind it happening. So, right. And then they published the letter, and and it was signed as an official decision by the European Arm Wrestling Federation's board. And I said, well, thank you for the official letter. I mailed them back. I'm also going through my mailbox here looking for my invite to the meeting where this was called. And I have a screenshot of the messenger reply to me that says, we never sent it to you because you already knew your opinion.
Okay. Interesting.
And again, EAF and WAF have no history of a functioning board working, and they still don't have. They've never had a functioning board working. The 7 people on the board don't have one mutual working language. There's not one language that all of them understand. There is actually no board meetings.
Interesting. Okay. So fast forward a little.
The next thing that happened from there is that the Hungarian Federation, that was my first big reason, that's they ignoring me as an elected board member. And right. Had they been clever, they'd just called the meeting and voted me down, which they didn't. So, and then there's a young man who's now part, just yesterday, Saturday, of forming the new Hungarian Federation, and publishing that out just happened 2 days ago, and we were glad and wishing them all the well. Now, this is a young kid, came to Sweden, 16 years old, started working in Sweden. And his brother was here with us at my company, where I was working at the time. And he started arm wrestling with a Swedish club. Goes back to Hungary, arm wrestles, develops to a half-decent international puller at the 85 kilo. And has been on the Hungarian team. And Hungary, trying very, very hard to please the IFA board, because this kid went to Slotty last year, 2018. 19-year-old kid, all he wants to do is be on the big stage of arm wrestling. He's finally reached a level where he can go to Slotty with his right arm. He goes to Slotty, dream of his life, and his national federation posts that he is banned for life.
Wow.
And I'm like, I will burn this federation down before I let them do that to an athlete who's just practicing a sport.
Absolutely.
So then at what point do they, and I might be jumping ahead too far here, but at what point do they pull the world championship from Poland?
Oh, that was sort of that was, forget the date to be honest, but that was early 2019 when they decided to move it to Romania. Yeah. And there are a few excuses around it, which could be technically correct, but then those sort of conditions that would have not been met have never been met by anybody, to be honest. While hosting championships, and just the idea of thinking that there would be something risky with letting the Mazurenko organization, who's arguably the best championship promoter in the world and have hosted the best world championships in the world several times, to say that they're not suitable to host it, it's just ridiculous. It's just, it was just so obviously an attempt to punish that organization.
Well, I can attest to that. I was in 2001. My first Worlds was run by Igor. So there's that. Now, what else do we need to know? Like, let's talk a little bit about the corruption that you spoke about earlier. What can you say about it?
Well, 2 years ago, I received funding from the Swedish official sports body to work in an international development project that we had described. We said, I would like to work through the international statutes of arm wrestling because they're not democratically secure. And I received some funding for some travels and so around that. And there are a few big holes in it. First of all, there's not been a clear auditing of the books ever. Now, David Eilertsen of Norway does what he can with what he's given, but it's really not enough there. Now, there are salaries being paid, contrary to Constitution. Now, I wouldn't disagree with the fact that if somebody putting in a full-time job gets paid, that's not a problem. If we have agreed on that we need a general secretary working full-time in an organization and he gets paid for that, that's not a problem. Only thing is it's not in the Constitution, though. Because the Constitution says that nobody who is elected can receive any form of reimbursement there. Now, the problem is that Mircea isn't technically elected. He's appointed by the president. So he is an appointed general secretary, receiving a salary, doing a job, and he's now the main face in this big argument. Now, all of that would have been fine, not a problem, except that he still carries a vote on the board.
Interesting. Well, is there, okay, correct me if I'm wrong, and I know I'm not because I read this last night, but in the WAF Constitution, it actually states that no one will be paid a salary in different wording, but it does state that.
It does exactly state that. And to my knowledge, and as listed in their own financial report, I think there's a salary paid to the president and there's a salary paid to the general secretary.
Do you happen to know how much that is?
I am going to take it out of the top of my head, and I think that somebody just published the financial report on there, but I think in total, it's about 50,000 euro a year. In total for that are salaries.
That is significant.
Oh yeah. And again, it's not the principle of somebody being paid that's the problem. It's the problem that we have a constitution that says something else.
Right, and then it does go on to state.
And then the other thing that enables a lot of the corruption is that what I'm saying about there not actually being board meeting. Now, the WAF board is made out of continental heads, continental representatives. So it's And there is no demand for any documentation of them actually being elected. So we have people there without any proof of actual election. Some of them are, but and then again they don't have. Now I'll go through this. I'm going to say that Simon Bercho speaks only English, and that's a pretty sure guess. Phil Rasmussen speaks only English. I know that Humberto speaks only Portuguese from Brazil. I know that Jim Beck speaks Russian and Kyrgyz. I know that the Egyptian representative speaks Arabic or Egyptian. I forget which it is they speak there. Attila speaks only Hungarian. And Asen speaks Bulgarian, Russian, and English. And Mircea speaks Romanian and English. Now tell me where they have a working conversation with that mix.
With many, many interpreters.
Yeah. So what actually does happen is there is a decision drafted and it's mailed around and asked for signatures. That's what happens.
Okay.
And there is there's not an ongoing discussion. They don't have the tool for an ongoing discussion. And financial calls are not made by the board in general.
So it basically enables one or two people to control the organization.
Entirely, yes. Okay. And the reason now, we also got the question, why don't, and Devon Larat put this question to us in Malaysia, why don't we just retake it? Why, there's so many people in WAF, why don't we just work within and recon? Now, the thing is, that's also a big thing that we made a difference in, is that now when we held our first General Assembly in Rumia, we asked Erika Ketola, the president of the Finnish organization, to chair that meeting. Because having the president, who's also under discussion, chair a meeting and not allowing discussions, not allowing votes on this and that sort of makes the entire process void. There's no point in that. If you're chairing your own election, and above all, you're also acting the translator between the English and the Russian-speaking community. Now, I'm all in favor for having Russian as a official language, but we need a separate translator then, so that we all can talk to each other. So yes, it's run very much off that seat.
That is definitely one of the differences I noticed between the statutes of IFA and the WAF Constitution is they speak to the official language. And while WAF is strictly English, IFA has
Russian. I work to add Russian as a second official language in the WAF.
The version I read last does not have Russian in there; it has English. And
I think that has been changed. So, but that was a change that was pushed by me a few years ago.
Right. And IFA has actually a few different languages, correct?
Well, we're registered in Switzerland because that is also practiced with international organizations that we register under Swiss legislation. Now, there's also something to dig into. Under what legislation is WAF actually registered?
Excellent question.
Because we really don't know. It's been moved back and forth from Canada to Bulgaria. And that's why we said, if we're going to do this, we're going to put it in Switzerland, where most international sports organizations are. That's also where the arbitrary court of sports is, should there be an argument. Now, the other big thing that has enabled this control of the sport is that the Congress, where you could perhaps protest and try to throw something over, is always on the eve of the championship. Which means that if you're difficult enough, you're actually risking your team and your team's participation. So bottom line is, you can be told to shut up, or you can just go home. And under that condition, nobody's going to take the final step. You're not going to sit there with 20, 30 people who have prepared and traveled on their own dime and risk their participation in that, because that's the short-term urgent thing. We've come to arm wrestle now. And the long-term strategic thing is we'll have to stand back, because I'm not going to risk those people's championships.
That's an interesting point. I had not even thought of that potential consequence.
Oh, it's very much so, and that's also in my interpretation, and this will be my interpretation, part of the motive of moving it away from Poland. Because Poland is the one place in the world where a championship could have carried on even if the WAF management had freaked out.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There is a comment in this will amuse you a little bit. A fellow says, "Is it just me, or does this guy look like the announcer for Top 8?"
Yeah, no, that is me. Yeah,
yeah. And another one that says,
"I do sometimes sell my voice for money, or at least for the plane ticket."
Yeah. And then another fellow, Owen Weaver, says, "How can WAF ban pullers if they are not signed or paid? Shouldn't you be a free puller able to pull anywhere?"
Yeah, well, put it this way: the list that according to what they passed, and they will keep arguing that was a democratic decision at the Congress. Yes, that was a democratic decision in Congress after they declared everybody opposed them in bad standing. So, and that is the other thing that's interesting about who gets to vote in the WAF Congress. Yeah, you've got to be a member. You've got to be a membership nation, but you have membership nations who just have they been elected by their country? Who's this guy who showed up and asked for a voting card? Who's the president? Now, that is the one thing we're putting the brakes on in IFA. We had over 30 nations participate in the World Championships, but we still have only about 20 nations who are actual members. Because I don't know how many calls I'm getting from countries around the world where this or that person wants to be the anointed IFA representative in their country. And we said, no, that's not how it works. IFA doesn't have representatives. If there are arm wrestlers in a nation, you form an organization so that we know it's actually controlled by its members and give us some sort of documentation of that. And then we will recognize that. So your country has a representative to IFA. It's not the other way around.
Interesting. Okay.
Because the other way around, and I have had that question, and that's the discussion we've had in a few countries. Can't I just be IFA and I'll get something started? No, it's a totally absurd thing to think that me, Anna Mazarenko, and Kirill Yakovlev and Marian Chapa are going to sit and decide who runs arm wrestling in a country we're not from. The arm wrestlers in that country will decide who runs arm wrestling there. All we're asking for is proof that is actually the case. Just give us some statutes, give us some minutes from a General Assembly proving who was there and who voted for there, and that you're actually representing arm wrestlers in your nation. That's what we want.
I'll ask you this for comment, but I will also ask Mercia this when he comes on the show next week. How they go about banning an athlete that's never competed under the WAF banner just for their name showing up on someone else's results list.
Well, that banning has no consequence in real life. That's the only thing is it would be if you would want to go to a WAF event. Now, the reasons why you would want to that are decreasing as we speak. So that is the only time that would have any relevance at all. And as for my athletes, and as for the Polish athletes and the Finnish athletes, or any of the other 20 nations that are members, it's totally irrelevant. It's totally irrelevant. We don't recognize WAF. When the Swedish Extra General Assembly had voted on leaving WAF, we sent a letter not only to WAF but also to GAIS and stated very clearly that the Swedish Arm Wrestling Federation has taken a vote by 2/3 majority, and we no longer recognize WAF as a governing body of arm wrestling in the world. Which means we really don't care. Or quoting Heartbreak, what's it called? Heartbreak Ridge, the old Eastwood movie, when it says it's a question of mind over matter. We no longer mind because they no longer matter.
Oh, we lost Mr. Gobby. What the heck happened? Anders, can you still hear me?
I'm right here.
Okay, there he's back. We'll get him back on here whenever he comes on. I do have a couple of WAF versus IFA style of questions. One of them is I've been in WAF Congress before, and I have seen voting happen where a certain member will hold up several proxy votes. So essentially they're voting up to however many times they have in their fist. So it could be, I've seen Igor have maybe 5 of them.
No, anybody hold up 5.
Well, I have in the past. I have seen quite a few. This was back in the day because it used to be the Fred Roy versus Ascend show.
Yeah.
When they were trying to.
I think that has been amended, so proxy voting is not allowed at all.
Right. And each nation in WAF gets one vote, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
So what IFA has introduced is proportionate voting.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit and I really like the idea. It's an interesting idea.
It's just generally push in the right direction. So your average little nation that really doesn't even have an arm wrestling organization, somebody's paid a membership fee and shows up and gets a name card for their country, and they have the same vote as Russia or Turkey, which is an enormous arm wrestling nation. Now, and if I was Russia or Turkey, I would be even more. I mean, I'm insulted as a Swedish president by that. We have 35 working clubs in Sweden. We have 300 people at our nationals. And to think that somebody who's just basically in somebody's garage but are calling themselves an national federation have a vote that carries the same weight as mine, that's just...
Right. And for those watching that don't know what I'm talking about, I believe it's 300 registered members gets 3 votes, 200 gets 2, 100 gets 1 kind of thing.
Yeah, but it doesn't increase over that. And we'll say this, we're still working on how to document and secure that number.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. How can you enforce that? Because
there's going to be a membership fee connected to it.
Right, but what is...
You pay a membership fee according to your size.
Right, but what is stopping Tajikistan from finding 100 people to become members?
Yeah, and that's what we're saying. We're still working with a model of that. Is that going to the writing hours that have participated in an international competition, active arm wrestlers, and that could possibly be the way, or simply it could also be the writing is now and will be asked to and will need to prove it when asked, when called upon to do so.
Yeah. So, I've seen many different things happen over the years, including
and it is a risk, and we need to, and that's why it wasn't in play this year. It was one vote for one nation this year when we started up, and we just and the Congress just agreed on until we have a secure measuring point of doing that. But the point of proportionate voting is in there, yes, in the principle of it.
Yeah. I've actually seen it to the point where arm wrestlers were arm wrestling for other nations on a pay-to-play kind of basis. They were hiring out their services to countries to pad their statistics at the World Championships and win gold medals for their country. And that's when they implemented the passport rule for registrations.
Yeah, it's been known to happen.
Yeah. So here's another one for you. Article 2E. Statutes of the Association of International Federation of Arm Wrestling state organization and implementation of the World Arm. This is the responsibilities: organization and implementation of the World Arm Wrestling Championships, as well as the National Continental Qualification Championships. Can you clarify the second piece of that statement that speaks to the National and Continental Qualification Championships?
Well, IFA is its members. IFA has no activity at all.
Okay.
IFA doesn't conduct arm wrestling as such. We're an organizing body, which means that it's like doing it on a national level. It's the same thing. If I look at my federation in Sweden, everything is done in the clubs, not by the federation. And on an international level, that means that if somebody is a fully recognized IFA member, then them doing their national championships is IFA enabling a national championship. So to me, it's not strange at all. IFA is it's not a promotion. IFA is us. IFA is all the arm wrestlers involved.
Interesting. Okay, yeah, I just thought that one might be open to interpretation.
And I think a lot of things are. I mean, you must remember that we took the experience we've had from a lot of things that have gone tits up with the old federation and try to put that in there. But this is not carved in stone, the final writing. You know, this is
right. It's a work in progress.
Yeah.
Yeah, it will evolve and grow. Now, I guess we've talked about this a little bit, but how is IFA management different from WAF management?
Well, I would say that all power corrupts, and I'm quite eager to get everything in place with rules and regulations and auditing and how things are controlled before I start getting corrupt. Because that will happen to me. And the way that corruption happens is never, oh, I'm going to try and make money out of that. That's not how it happens. The way corruption happens is that I've been working with this almost full time for half a year, and then all of a sudden I feel that maybe I don't need to take it to a vote. Maybe I need to know best anyway. And then next thing, so I just start making calls on my own because I'm the most informed anyway, and that's how corruption happens. And next thing that happens is, okay, well, they're supposed to pay trips for me there. And I've been really busy. I'm going to be really tired. And is it unreasonable for me to ask for a business class ticket instead? And that's the next thing. You're giving yourselves reasons. Nobody starts out thinking, oh, yes, now I'm in office. I'm going to start stealing money. That's not how it happens. And that's why the IFA management are quite eager to have all control systems in place as soon as possible. Now, the one thing that would be very, I think, a clear indicator of that is we came into, the statute stated it's a 4-year mandate. We came into the General Assembly now and said, we think that's unreasonable because this is very young. We have no track record. We have proven nothing. And we asked the first Congress to just re-elect us up till next year instead.
Wow. So is that stating that there will be a WAF election, or pardon me, IFA election at the World Championship in Orlando?
Yes, there will.
Interesting. So is there a maximum?
The other thing is that we also push through that there is actually an election committee, which means that we don't ask for the nominations. We don't tell people, oh, you emailed him in 2 days too late. There's a group of 3 people who Congress appointed to handle the process of the nomination and the election, because that's also where corruption happens. And that's the South Korean president, that's the Ukraine president, and that's Denise Wattles. Now, Denise has advertised that she might have gone in over her head with the workload there with the walls as well. But those were the 3 appointed.
That's interesting. Definitely a different approach to what we've been used to. Is there a maximum time you can serve in your position?
I don't think there is in our statutes, no.
No. Okay. And is there a pay schedule? Is there a per diem that is allotted for IFA executive members?
A reimbursement for us?
Yes.
No. This far, we haven't even collected any travels. We haven't even taken expenses.
Okay. Is that something that IFA is going to consider in the future? No.
You see, the thing is, IFA don't really do arm wrestling as such. They enable arm wrestling on national level and on international level. And if you look at the professionals in the sport, if you look at WAL or PAL or ERP or the Zloty Tour, now they are professional promotions. And they are there to make money. People say, oh, but Igor Mazurenko is making money with Zloty. Of course he is. It's a business. He sells a product around arm wrestling. It's not strange at all. That's what he does. Everybody involved makes their money elsewhere. And IFA is just about allowing everybody to work in a way that's appropriate and having the same rules apply to everybody.
Yeah. Huh. Now, we're talking about the World Championship, and maybe you can elaborate what you know about the cost of running a World Championship that is charged by the world governing body. Now, let's talk a little bit about Orlando. So some people were asking what the United States might have to pay in order to have IFA agree to let them hold the World Championship, and what requirements would be in place for them to do this.
Well, again, remember that this is the second championship we're doing, so everything's a work in progress as well. Now, I think we have agreed on a sanctioning fee of €1,000. But the entire economy around the championship is handled by the hosting nation. And there is an outcome share instead.
Oh, I see. So that's
so the hosting nation are assuming all of the risks.
So it's proportionate, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Are you aware what past WAF championships have cost towards WAF? What they have paid towards
WAF?
I'm
going to say that a lot of the alleged corruption, and I will say alleged corruption, has happened around the actual championships. Now, because what's audited on the books and that is presented to Congress, that's what is in WAF's overall turnover. Now, the championships are handled by them, but there is not that transparency into the championships money as there is with the financial report, talking about WAF. And because of, depending on if you count starting fees, you count sponsors, you count kickbacks from accommodation, and that's something else. So that's going to be a huge difference. It is a huge difference where you're forcing people to stay in certain hotels, and the prices are 50 to 100% higher than if you were to book that hotel in another way. Then it's so it's a clear kickback system, and I don't disagree with that on principle. I just think there should be a sort of limit to how much you're actually allowed to milk your arm wrestlers.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have a referee question coming in the comments. Stacy Foster says, in Canada, all of our referees have been certified by the CAWF, which fall under WAF. How will the referees be certified in IFA?
By the IFA's referees panel. And the referees panel will be able to allow. Now, there's an interesting thing there. Now, the WAF referees panel was working excellently, and the referees work in WAF was working excellently when Leonard was running it. Welcome back. You were there all the time. You're just off screen. Now, the system, and I've had trouble explaining this to Leonard because I said, now that worked because you're a good man. But if a bad man happened to come into that position, or a bad woman, it wouldn't work, because the referee panel in WAF, as it was under Leonard, was appointed by Leonard, which means he says he will hold himself accountable to that panel due to the fact that he is a good man. But those could also, worst case scenario, be 5 or 6 of his yes men who are right there telling me how good those stripes look on him, which they don't really anyway. So, and that would be the hole in that system. The head referee was elected by Congress, and he would appoint his people. Now, I saw a few problems in that. So what we've done in IFA is the elected board, which is again to be elected in Florida, appoints the referees panel. And we can change that choice at any time. But the thing is, it's not one person. It's not a head referee. We appoint a group of 6 people. Now, 6 people are very difficult to lean on all at once, especially when they're of that dignity. And we've also said that they don't necessarily have to be the 6 absolutely best table referees in the world. They're very good, though, the ones we have. But they're in charge of the organizing of the refereeing system, which means they're not only on there on merit of their referee skills. They're on there because they're in charge of developing, organizing, and training, and so forth. So what we're doing is that panel of those 6 people, for every championship, they appoint that championship head referee. So Leonard was now the head referee in Poland, but that was a group of his peers that have appointed him, that he was accountable to.
That seems like a much better way of doing things, instead of just having a referee in chief.
Yeah, we feel secure this way, because that means if 1 or 2 mess up or politically influenced, then there's enough people and enough weight, and they're spread around the world to straighten it up. And again, and I told them, I had a couple of run-ins when they some of them wanted to start falling into all WAF behavior, where Leonard is the head referee, and I said, look, the board has put you there, and if you're not going to be grown-ups, if you're not going to act your office, the board can take you out of there. And put somebody else in there, because and I don't want you coming back. And for the first time, I've asked all of them, and they have complied. On an individual level, I've said, I want you giving me pros and cons of how things have been working. This is a matter of protocol. Because when I get criticism and they're saying, oh, this person didn't make masters and this person didn't make that, then I am able to say, look, we have a protocol of an evaluation from each member that I have documented. And it's not through one person's voice only. I have 6 statements stating how they thought that worked out. Is it perfect yet? No, but it's a much more secure system.
Yeah. And if I could expand, Stacy, if you're still watching this.
Don't leave us, Stacy.
CAWF actually certifies referees under the CAWF, but you don't carry the same designation if you go and referee at the World Championship. You still have to take the World Clinics. Is that not correct?
That has been at WAF before, and what I was pushing for in WAF and what I'm pushing for in IFA is that but this is entirely up to the referees panel, because that's exactly why we've got them in place. And I've had the argument with Leonard for a year now. No, argument's wrong. The discussion with Leonard for over a year, and I'll say, like, if you set your system and you grade a master, then a master is a master, no matter where they're from. There's not a better master that you would prefer that you can ask for. And that has also been a lot of the discussion historically between Europe and Northern America. How come there is a group of elderly, middle-aged men who absolutely need to be here? Well, they are better. And I would agree that they are better. But if we're going to have a system where we say we've graded people to a master, then a master's got to be a master.
Yes.
And they need to specify that for this championship, we need X amount of masters and X amount of seniors. They don't get to say which names. Which means that if I am in Poland and I have 10 masters, if that's what they're asking for, then there could very well be 10 Polish masters. Because we're not going to put it on a host to fly in people for political reasons.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, if, say, Canada does join IFA, at some point, probably there will be a recognition of Canadian referee certifications that carry over to the world level.
Well, I would say that the Canadian, I don't think you should be able to grade to master's level in your home nation. That's my own opinion. But this is for the referees panel to decide. What I've asked them for a while is that set a system for a national grading, and I would want to see them having to reach that before even getting to go to the clinic at Wolves.
Right.
But that's my personal opinion, and whatever the referees panel decide to do, because they're really doing this work very well and they're taking it very seriously.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Gabi, what have you got for us today?
So if Canada does not join, can a Canadian go to Orlando next year?
Oh yeah.
Love it.
They'll pay a person. They'll have to join as an individual when they come. That's just about complying with the rules and so forth. And that's a €20 membership cost instead of a national fee. So I had a few of the Canadians in room who were a little bit upset with that because that hadn't quite communicated through. So understandably, but if a country doesn't have a membership nation, your individuals are free to register.
Now, what happens if a country joins the IFA and an individual does not want to have to go through its country's respective qualification process and just wants to show up in Orlando and compete? Can he do that?
No.
If his country, he cannot.
No. Because we're about developing arm wrestling, and we believe that the best development of arm wrestling is to actually enable the nationals to grow and give them and whereas nationals as well. Because arm wrestling doesn't really happen at Worlds; it happens in all of our countries all the year around. And this is how we've grown the Swedish nationals. You can't circumnavigate it in any way.
I'll ask
whatever system that federation chooses. That's what goes if we have recognized a member from there.
That's fair.
Well, what WAF has done by banning not in good standing, like 500 arm wrestlers. So let's take the pool of Canadians that are on that list. Now, to the best of your knowledge, if Canada stays with WAF, to the best of your knowledge, do we then not allow that list of banned Canadian arm wrestlers to come to the national championship?
That is the exact writing in the proposal that they pushed through. And not only, and it's even worse than that. There's a time limit. Now, if WAF decides, now they publish that, which means that you as a national federation, because you're still a member of WAF, you have 2 weeks to act now. You have 2 weeks to officially ban them on a national level. If you don't, the World Federation has a right to take action against you as a national federation. That's what they put in writing. It's totally absurd, but they did put that in writing. And they also have a right to seek economic compensation for whatever damage they think they've been caused by this. It's beyond ridiculous in every way. But the fact is that as long as Canada, and the other thing, and I'll say this to Canada and the Canadian arm wrestlers, you're an upstanding democratic nation. Now, if you do not leave WAF, you're going to have to face up to that document, that banning document with those 500 names is signed by your name. That's your name at the bottom of those pages as long as you stay in WAF.
Yeah, the other thing is they've tried to do that. There was basically the letter that was asking Canada to suspend Rick Pinkney.
Yeah.
That was voted on at the last national championship. Mm-hmm. And the threat, I guess, for lack of a better word, maybe there is no better word, because I guess that's exactly what it is that if Canada did not vote to hold Rick not in good standing, we would be seen as not in good standing as a nation. Is it kind of the same thing that we're going to have to face with this group that is now on the list?
Well, see, the only reason they haven't enforced that yet because they're dead scared of losing Canada. Now, if I didn't misread, I think it was Ashley Costello's recollection of the Worlds, then WAF management had, and I'm not trying to misquote, and I grossly disagree with Joey and Ashley on principle on what we should be doing here, but I don't want to be misquoting them. So, but from what I read, Joey was approached and said, because of Canada's special history in arm wrestling, there will be leniency, there will be understanding, there will be tolerance. Now that is, in a democratic organization, that is absolutely disgusting. Why should one country receive a special treatment on that?
Yeah, that's a slippery slope.
Yeah.
I can confirm that you are, well, I mean, you're not getting maybe exact words, but the idea of what she was trying to say and what was said to Joey and Ashley at some point is fairly accurate. And we can look at it as, hey, we're Canada. We feel really good about that. But you're absolutely correct. In a democratic organization, that should not have happened.
And I'll say, I just point out very clearly, I love Joe and Ashley. I think they're lovely people. They've visited here in my home. I failed making my sauce bananas that night. I served it failed anyway because it wasn't time to make another one. They're lovely people. I think they're dead wrong on this. But there are a lot of friends that I have in the world that I think are dead wrong about stuff. So
yeah,
and point that out.
No, I agree with you. And this is going to be a very divisive topic in Canada. To the point where
scripture into here for a moment. Sure, I've got to do that. I'm a missionary kid. You know, the second commandment is thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. Gobi, you're looking totally puzzled here. This is Bible. This is scripture.
I don't read fiction. I don't read fiction.
Okay, let me why I'm quoting this here. Okay. Now, when you get all the 10 commandments, thou shalt not fuck about and so forth. Why is not taking the Lord's name in vain at the top? Is that about not saying, oh my God? Is that the Monty Python sketch? Don't say Jehovah. No, that's not what it means. What it means is you don't get to put God's name under stuff he didn't say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You don't get to say God says unless God says. Now, moving this down to our little arm wrestling world out of theology for a moment, that is exactly what they're doing. They are putting Canada's name under that ban as long as you're a member of there.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, you're right. This is going to be very divisive in Canada, and it will have repercussions on both sides of it. But also at the same time, WAF has kind of put us into a corner here, and we can't really get out of it without hurting arm wrestlers in some way. So I'll ask you the question: why should Canada join the IFA?
Well, basically,
all the things we've already said.
I can answer. Even I can answer.
I'll say this: joining the IFA is really secondary. Let's start out, because in Sweden we did this in 2 steps. It was WAF, leaving WAF first, and then we had another 2 months, another General Assembly about joining IFA. Now, are you, as a justice-loving democratic society, going to continue and ignore what is happening in that organization? You want to be a member of that organization. That's what you're going to ask. Never mind IFA. Are you going to continue to let somebody use your name to do what they're doing? That's what Canada needs to ask themselves. So should Canada join IFA? Yes, I would love to have you over there. Should you join WAF? Well, if you have leave WAF. Yes, if you have any self-respect whatsoever, you must leave WAF.
Yeah, you know what? I'm waiting to weigh in on this officially for myself, but it's really hard to argue, and they've kind of made our decision. They've pushed us towards a certain decision, and it's not what obviously not what their intention is, but WAF is pushing us towards the decision they don't want in a bullyish kind of way.
Let me just say something. I don't like qualification. I don't love that Canada might force me to qualify, but I understand what he is saying, and I see the merit behind it for the greater good. I do see that, and if it's the case, I think Canada can do good by joining the IFA. Although I don't like qualification, I despise banning. On principle alone, when I saw that banned list 2 days ago or yesterday, and I posted it, this is a ship that is sinking. Once you start banning like that, you are done. Their ship is sinking, and on principle alone, I think many arm wrestlers will side with the IFA on principle alone, because you can't do that. You can't ban people that love to do something and make no money doing it. It's ridiculous. It's
and especially in the name of organizations whose sole purpose is to promote that.
It's so ludicrous. It's laughable. When I saw the banned list, I laughed because I don't like following WAF in the last year or so. I don't like what they're doing, and to see them do that is like watching your enemy pick up a gun and put it to his temple. I'm like, go for it. Ridiculous. And you're sinking your own ship, and we will all benefit from it. It's just awesome.
Well, Swedish Arm Wrestling TV might have done the best intro to a video I've seen in quite some time.
Oh
yeah.
I haven't quite looked at that yet. I know I saw Krieger posted it, but I've been busy. I was in the air actually most of the time when that was coming back from South Africa. I'll say one thing about our demands for documentation of the national organization. For the first time, because of that demand, Denmark shows up at awards with 15 to 20 people. Mm-hmm. And we actually have a federation there. And we have several other places where we actually, for the first time, have a federation in place, and not just one guy coming and showing up saying he's his country. Mm-hmm. So us just sticking it out, and the same thing in South Africa where I was now. It's Armando Toyo organized the 2004 World Championships at Durban. Is now heading the restart a new federation again down there, and I've been his guest for a week. And he likes to make things happen. He rushes along, and I said, no, we cannot rush along. Just you need to get us a documentation of your registration, of your statutes, and make sure things are happening. And all of a sudden, most of South Africa's clubs have joined him now because there's something to join. Now that wouldn't happen unless we had put our thumb in his eye and said, just get it organized first.
Yes. So what is the world's looking like in Orlando? What can we expect to see that maybe we have not seen in the past from WAF or even the previous year at IFA?
Well, I think this is going to be the year where North America comes back to international arm wrestling.
No doubt.
I wanted to,
because North America hasn't been in international arm wrestling. North America runs a few professional promotions whose success are based on the fact that we don't invite people who can beat North Americans.
that's
Yes.
that's a very good opinion. I like it, but
I like this guy.
let's talk about doping. Does IFA do doping control to the same level as say the WAF championships?
Not to the same amount this year, but we did do it. And the different thing that we do is we turn it over to the, in this case, Polada, the Polish anti-doping agency, which is the national version, and we order the tests from them. They do the selection. We don't do a card draw. We don't play around. We don't pretend to be playing blackjack at a table after the podium. The officials who are trained to that, they get to pick whoever they want to, and they don't have to explain. And we would have liked to do more, but to be honest, when planning this year, we had no idea what the size was going to be.
So do we have a set number? How many tests were done in Poland?
10.
10. And how many can we expect to be done in Florida?
More. That's all I'm going to be able to say. But I can't say a number there because I would be just making it up now.
It is interesting that you mentioned the blackjack game, because I've been to a WAF championship where it was myself and two other gentlemen that placed top 3. We sat at a table, and somebody leaned over and said, "Don't pick the one in the middle."
You see, I've been in strongman and power sports for longer than I've been in arm wrestling. Now, the problem with the podium thing is that you're making the mistake to think that people are using roids to win. They're not using roids to win. They're using roids to get respect. Now, winning is a step on the way of that. And they're using the roids as a way to repair a non-existing self-esteem. When they decided on it, I planned making a T-shirt with it for years, and I haven't done it yet. I'm just going to call it. It's not winning. It's not called winning using steroids, and it's not called making love in a whorehouse. Because that is just the same thing. We are not lenient on this in any way. We are not recognized by WADA yet. We started 6 months ago. There's no way we could be, but we are WADA compliant in our work, and we're working towards that recognition. We're following the regulation. We're following the same rules. And all of our national members that are member of their national anti-doping organization are doing that. Finland, Poland, Sweden, we're all under our national anti-doping.
So it's basically going to be random amongst every competitor. It's not necessarily based on podium.
The anti-doping officials trained will have the right to choose whoever they will.
That's interesting. And is it a matter of when as well, or can they do it anytime throughout the event?
They can do it put it this way, on WADA compliancy, they can do it anytime throughout the year.
Yeah.
Right.
So if we just find the money, which we don't have to do all of that right now, we do out of contest tests in Sweden and in other countries that are also in there. So we have that continuously here in the arm wrestling. But if I were to send somebody to your house in, what's it, Winnebago? No, what's it called where you live?
Pretty close, but Portage La Prairie is where I live, which is about 50 kilometers from Winnipeg.
Okay, Winnipeg. I know that. That's a hockey team as well. Jets, isn't it?
Yep.
The Jets, yeah.
Okay.
Best team in Canada.
So if I were to send somebody to your door, a knock on it, and you would decline, and you would say, "This is not a contest. I'm not giving it," then you would be banned, and you would not be welcome to come to the next contest.
And you would face the standard. Is it a year?
4 years. Refusing to give a test is considered a full PED positive.
Wow.
No
We have a case like that in Sweden now, where we have a Swedish. I'm not going to give any names. It's published, but it's just the principle. He, in December a year or two ago, refused at his local gym to give a test. He doesn't agree entirely on this describing what happened, but that's the ruling by the Swedish WADA. and he's banned for 4 years for not giving that test.
Wow, that is a significant banning period.
Well, it's water compliance. It's normal water standards.
Wow. I think that it would really rock the boat if we had out of meat testing in arm wrestling.
Well, we do. We do. We do.
Well, not North America.
Well, we do in principle. It's just that we need to finance it as well. So,
okay, I'm going to throw something else at you, because along the way, when we are thinking about leaving WAF, there's several consequences thrown out there that people have to think about, and they've been pointed out at length, that we will then lose the ability to compete in the Continental Championship, which is in Costa Rica. We will lose the ability to compete at the Pan American Games. Or I don't know which one I'm mixing up there. North Americans might be in Mexico. Pan Americans, I'm not sure where they are. But those two events in particular are being used.
You're going to lose the opportunity to compete anywhere where WAF holds control.
Right. So do you see down the road, because we're in the growth stages right now, WAF sanctioning, or WAF will be obviously doing their thing down there. Do you see IFA as holding a rival continental championship, or will that be up to the North American bodies to form a North American Arm Wrestling Federation that's affiliated with IFA?
It's underway in Asia and Europe. And structurally, we're looking a little bit at how that is. That going to be separate initiatives, separate bodies that are then affiliated to us, or is going to be groups within? That's not. It's looking like separate bodies, but affiliated with us for logical reasons. I'm going to say that North America has always been a stretch trying to do a North American Championship, just out of sheer geography. I mean, each of your nationals could be that. So I'm not sure that the North American really has a purpose at this point. That's a personal opinion. And I think we need to recognize that the continents are in different places. I mean, if you look at the central parts of Europe, where I fly into Vienna to go to Slovakia and pull against somebody else who drove for half an hour from 3 other countries, then that's obviously a place where a continental championship is relevant. Now, doing it in North America, we have to fly for a day just to get it within your own country. Is it an option? Is it an efficient way of doing it? I don't think so. I think rather both the US and Canada need to look at the structure of their national qualifiers in a different way. And if I were, and this is not my choice, this is not an official statement, but I would think that looking at it volume-wise, I would as soon see a separate qualifier from each state in the United States. and whatever thing you have in Canada. You have provinces,
We have provinces, and we have a provincial championship, which then progresses to a nationals.
Yeah, because you see that Denmark, with 5 million people, have their national championships, and we've got small countries with like 1 million country in their country. Now, I can fit lots of them into one American state.
Yes.
So I'm just saying that it won't necessarily fit all continents.
Yeah, at one point in Canada, there was basically 2 national bodies, but one was for the East and one was for the West. And at some point, they amalgamated and started holding a national championship that would go back and forth from East to West. But the team is obviously much larger from the area that it's in.
Yeah.
So it becomes a problem because in Canada we have some stuff to sort out as far as that goes. But yeah. Winnipeg it is this year, so it's right in the middle. So we should have the biggest nationals ever.
It's just close to you.
Yeah. I can sleep in my own bed and compete, which doesn't happen very often. Yeah. Well,
I thought he made a great point regarding podium and drug users. I believe there's a higher percentage of people that finish off the podium than the percentage of people that finish on the podium, if you can grasp that. He made that was a strong statement, and I agree 100%.
Well, see, it's you've got to. I mean, and I've been around this forever. It's a behavioral pattern that you need to understand. And
Psychological, yeah.
yeah, and the thing is that why are you doing this to win? No, and that is why WADA code states if you're suspended, you're not even allowed to be at a side table, which is logical because if you get your average steroid head, he doesn't have to win. He just has to show his friends that he could beat the guy. And he can do that on the side table. And that's why water regulation states that, no, we're not going to give him that. If you're banned, you don't get to show off.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, Mr. Gabi, have you got anything else today?
Man, I didn't know this guy at all, but
Chris Saunders.
Yeah, well, I'm a good judge of character, and I definitely, politics aside, I tend to gravitate much more towards him than Joey and Simon. My instinct tells me he's on the right path, and he's a man of integrity and transparency, which is what we need. And although I don't love the qualification process, it's not something that serves Chris Gabi. I can see it serving our country. So let's hope this gravitates and navigates towards Canada joining IFA, and hopefully, and I think naturally we're going to see the fall of WAF. I think it's inevitable, but I think the path is good.
Well, now let me ask you one thing before we close the show. First of all, last call in the comments section. If you guys have something to ask that's related to IFA, please throw it in there and we'll get it asked. But the plan is to have Mercia on the show in 1 week. What question would you ask him?
I would ask him that. We're still friends on Messenger. We don't speak. We were friends, and it's not so much a question as a comment. It's that life is better without a leash.
Yes, it is.
That is interesting.
Great quote. Yeah.
Well, I really hope that everyone that's watching the show today had their questions answered. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
It's late. It's getting into the evening now where you are, so we appreciate you very much for coming on. And by the end of January, we're going to have a direction in Canada, one way or another, on which way we're going to go as a sport in Canada, and it's going to be interesting.
Well, I was worried before the Swedish vote because it's a stressful situation and something you invest a lot into, time and effort and energy, and that's the case for everybody in Canada. Everybody's investing a lot of stuff into this, so it's tense, obviously, but I have a very, very hard time believing that Canada would be stupid enough or to stay in WAF.
Allow me to ask you, Anders, one question. What is your opinion on the character of Rick Pickney?
I think he has an excellent character, and I would sometimes see him trusted himself more would be good.
Yeah, I think he's my favorite Canadian. I take shots at him on Facebook now and then, but he's my favorite Canadian. And just I've said it along. Once he left WAF or got suspended, I automatically sided with wherever he was going. I think he's just much like you. I think he's transparent. He's honest, and he has no selfish agenda. Everything he does is for the greater good of his sport, more specifically in his country. So yeah, I think he's a great guy.
I just think if there is anything to say, I don't think he even realizes his own stature and posture in arm wrestling. He is a giant in arm wrestling. Yeah,
he's very humble though, but yeah, he is. And I have to believe a lot of our pullers in our country will see that and side with him. But time will tell.
And he is on our referees panel. He wouldn't be there if we didn't trust him.
As he should. I've said it for years. If he's not the best, he's among the best refs in the world.
I'm going to ask you one more thing before we close, because you reminded me of something. Were you there during the process of suspending Leonard or removing Leonard as referee in chief of WAF?
Yes, I was there.
Okay, how did that unfold?
I will slightly disagree with what Rick and Leonard says themselves, because according to WAF Constitution, his removal was done correctly. Now, because not the banning, but the removal.
Right.
Because what happened is, and this is part of the middle-aged North Americans always flying in. That's what caused the agitation over such long time. That's what really caused that. Because there were a lot of Europeans feeling that they were backseated by this all the time. And that's what really turned them against Leonard, because Leonard was otherwise liked all over the world. Now, what WAF statutes say is that the president is allowed to add whatever he chooses to the agenda whenever he chooses. So the 30 or 60-day thing for other people to send in stuff to the agenda doesn't apply to the president. So WAF statutes allows the president to, on the day, add any business to the agenda. And that is exactly what happened in that meeting. They asked the meeting, and the question was raised by Jim Beck from Kyrgyzstan. They had a very complicated proposal of how to try and override the referee's judging system. And then it was raised to Congress, should we not should we not as a Congress agree that we can let the board appoint the head referee instead? And they got that vote. And that is one of the things that are absolutely not democratically secure in those statutes, but that's still there. So it was done according to their rules, however crooked the rules are.
And okay, that's a different perspective, and I appreciate that very much.
However, it was also very stupid, but the banning, however, was totally off the charts. That's like, and I shouted at them, look, you got a Congress vote to do this. I don't agree with it, but I have to respect it. But you did get a Congress vote to do that. But why on earth do you feel the need to ban the man?
Yeah, that didn't make any sense.
No, that was just ridiculous.
Okay, I got a few quick snappers here. Will countries be limited to the number of competitors per class next year?
If you by next year mean this year, 2020, no, it will not.
Will that happen in future events?
Yes, but there's not been a decision made.
Okay. Do you have an idea of where the 2021 World Championship will be held?
No. South Africa are eager to work with it. I visited them there. I was not preparing for that. That was more helping them in the federation. We don't have a bid on the table, and we're going to make sure it's at a place where as many arm wrestlers as possible can participate as easily as possible.
Yeah, South Africa sounds like a dream. I would love to go there.
Same here. I missed it in 2004.
Yeah. Well, you see, there's got to be a lot of stuff on the table, although the difference between the ridiculous contract demanded by a WAF for a world championship and what we are asking is huge, but things still need to be in place. Now, what happened in Poland in volume is that we took away the limitations this year. Sweden brought down 86 people. The home nation had over 100 people there. So we got a decent amount of people just by allowing that. So it's a jump start in a new system. That's what we did. And that's what 2020 is also keeping that open, because it's allowing us to borrow quantity from North America. There's 300 million Americans around there. And because it is more expensive to fly over the Atlantic than to just move within Central Europe, where we have the largest part of arm wrestlers in the world, then we have to have a system that enables the home nations to compensate for that in volume. And that's what we're doing.
I seem to recall at one point in the WAF, previous to 1997, there were provisions made that they could have extra competitors per class, and that would be something that would be interesting if IFA would put that in place. But
well, we have proposals for last year's defending champions, or the last year podium being exempt from the quotas. Mm-hmm. That could be a model.
This was asked, will the IFA championships, and I know this is a crystal ball type question, is Canada being considered to hold the IFA championships in the near future? And let's throw, say, 5 to 10 years on that.
Well, let's first see if we count it as a member.
Yeah, I guess a lot of it will. I guess we can answer if that. We'll at least know if it's a no.
Yeah.
And I guess the last one, we talked about a little bit about this, and this was brought up to me. Perhaps the gentleman that brought it up was confused on who I was interviewing today, but asked a question about WAF padding the numbers in their weight class at the last World Championship.
Yes, they did that at Europeans as well.
Okay.
Now, if you're the very fun thing is, if you're counting on volume to sort of disguise that, people are not going to care about junior category goals and so forth, and nobody's going to notice. Now, that all works as long as you don't have a Swedish kid running SATV with Asperger's. When you do, you have somebody who's actually checking, somebody who's actually counting, and that's how we found out. And that's all credit to Kigge Wiklund, who did that and who's the encyclopedia of arm wrestling in general. Now, the reason that happened is that, and it's absolutely beyond unacceptable. It's that those are official World Championship results. You cannot do that. That's just, I don't understand how they do it. But the thing is that there are nations in the world who will receive their government support related to how many people were in the categories they were competing in. So I could imagine those nations coming, and this is now speculative, but I could imagine those nations coming to saying that it's a no victim crime. Can you just put some extra names on there so we make sure we get our expenses covered from our government or our regional government instead of not. Nobody's being placed behind anybody else, and no arm wrestler, so to say, suffering. I would understand the emotions behind that argument, but it's an official World Championship result. You cannot do that. That's just putting us off all sort of listing for being a serious sport.
Interesting. Well,
that would be the reason. Not mainly trying to bump up to compete with us.
Right.
Crazy.
Well, I appreciate you coming on again, and I think we've asked everything we need to ask.
Oh, yeah.
You know how it goes, though. The second I get off of here.
Categories.
Pardon me?
Can I just comment on our weight categories shortly?
Sure. Let's comment on that. Anything you want to say to finish us off here? Let's do it.
We just published them last week. And what happened is we moved in when we started IFA. We moved in with the senior weight categories, basically like most weight sports running in a percentage of weight instead of 5 kilo intervals. And that is much more logical. You get bigger gaps as you get heavier. And in total, we get less categories. Now, the old system was about generating as many categories as possible, as many possible goals as possible, and thereby as many people to milk for starting fees as possible. And by that, you're also devaluating the actual championship title by having too many categories, too many championships. So we're moving that in percentage now, but we didn't have time to apply that to masters and juniors this year. We just ran the old system there, and there were a number of proposals in for the General Assembly for changes. And we asked the General Assembly, can we take those proposals, and would you trust the board to sort of summarize them and add them up and put a junior and masters proposal on the table? And we've done that, and we published that. We got the Congress go ahead to do that, and it's come down to much fewer weight categories, especially in the masters, and the same principle of percentage. And somebody said, well, it's going to make it much more difficult to pull now because there are bigger steps in them. And this is not surprisingly, from masters people who are suddenly seeing their dreamed of gold medal move slightly away from them. And it says, no, it's not more difficult to compete. It's just more difficult to win.
And that's what you want, really. Ultimately, you want it to have more value.
And I will agree, there are some big steps. If we look at the senior grandmasters, there's a huge step from 70 to 95 or whatever it is. But again, we cannot have a weight category so that everybody can reach the podium just by getting there.
I've always said that the arm wrestling associations are not there to cater to every weight class and make sure everyone has a like you said, a plausible position for a podium. It's not the way it should be, and it waters down a world title. It does.
All right, gentlemen. If there's nothing else,
thank you very much for having me on, and I am looking forward to hear of the vote in Canada.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I will. We will keep you posted, I'm sure. I am certain that the second that vote is decided, it will be announced, and yeah, we'll see how it goes. Appreciate you very much, Anders. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And if you guys are still hanging around and watching, Gabi and I are doing a one bonus episode this week, and so stay tuned for that. We need to talk about some changes to the site, and yeah, we'll do that.
Sounds good, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good evening.